Okay, hello everybody. Let me do one update in the middle of uploading many videos. There was one particular thing I said, I'm going to look at it real quick, meaning Google it. Sure enough, it was the reason for the update. This is news. This is politics news, but things that affect the United States. A big story yesterday, which I commented on my little videos, was the New York Times chose to run an op-ed, an article, and they allowed the writer of that op-ed to remain anonymous. Okay. But what, as I read it myself and others read it, it almost reminded me, sadly, of the John Benet Ramsey ransom note. For what this tragic story of the young girl who was murdered many years ago now. But I read the books on that at that time. It was one of interest to me. And I won't say how it reminded, we are a faction, I think the ransom note said. And the New York Times op-ed piece said, we are basically an inside resistance that is working within the Trump administration. And it painted a picture, and that op-ed came out at the same time when another book by Bob Woodward came out. And then it even said, as a senior administration official, that there was talk about the 25th Amendment, that they should take action to remove the president, should the insiders do that. Now, as a news watcher, I understood the last year and a half now, whatever. There are some, like the media people, who have pushed that narrative. That is, and they did it day and night and day, that he's really unstable. And you had people on CNN, a doctor, diagnose him. But then as I just watch news, people that work for Trump and then watching world events, that just wasn't so. It just wasn't true. He wasn't, yeah. Oh, okay. Trump wasn't, yeah, just in there. Trump wasn't mentally unstable in the way they portrayed it. Okay, and then the people that work for Trump basically dispelled it. Okay? But that was a narrative. Okay, now why make this one particular one on that? You have to understand, as fact, not as an anonymous source, within the last year, of all these investigations, you have had more people within the FBI, Justice Department, actually get fired and face criminal charges in any one case in our nation's history. Now, I want you to understand that, okay? This is not Trump saying deep state or any other InfoWars or whoever, Alex Jones, saying deep state. You now have as fact that more insiders, FBI people, McCabe people, Strux, Lisa Page, and others, facing criminal charges, getting fired, and being exposed. Okay, that's fact. That's not anonymous. Now, what about the people that are still there? Tonight, there might be breaking news in the sense that Trump might decide to declassify all of these secret texts and intelligence, and Congress has been trying to get the Justice Department and others to release things that they're investigating. And the Justice Department has decided to hide those things. And they've stonewalled Congress. But Trump has not yet decided himself to declassify and to make those open. But it seems as if the last few days that people on the inside knew that Trump was ready to do that. Which would mean what? It would mean it's very possible that people working at the Justice Department and all these people that we've seen in the media might face criminal liability because others have. With somebody that's actually working, I looked at the definition of a senior level administration official. And the most recent thing that was posted 1 hour ago online by the New York Times, now it's 6:25 p.m., okay, today, whatever today's day, this goes up live. And they actually were walking back. They were saying, well, anybody could really qualify. And even people that are at the Justice Department that were friends of Lisa Page or people that knew each other because the FBI and these agencies obviously work together, friends of Andy McCabe. And then the news might break that Trump's decided to declassify all that stuff that they were hiding, meaning some of them who had long careers and obviously did never miss the strokes, and others never thought in a million years that all of this would be revealed over the last year, that part of it would become public. Mr. McCabe and others, Mr. Comey, might actually face criminal charges because I think he did violate the law when he released the memos to his friend to leak it to New York Times. Now understand, people are people. So if you are one of those people, and all of a sudden you realize it's going to break, the dam is going to break, and some of them might be also held, lose their jobs, lose their livelihoods, which they don't want, but it would be because things might get exposed if Trump does this. And what would you do? Would you contact the New York Times and say you were a senior administration official? Though I just looked at it and checked it, and even the New York Times itself posted an hour ago, oh, that could mean anybody. Even the people that know all these other people that actually publicly stated, it came out now, men like John Brennan, who said, you will go down in history as the dustbin of dictators and despots. You had people like Strux and others that said, we must do everything in our power to stop this man. Now, if you know all that's going to be revealed, you might go to prison. Would you, I'm a senior level administrator, work for Trump, and the scenario that they would paint could be completely false. I don't believe there's people running around the Trump White House hiding documents from him. Because even all these other people that work for him, Mr. Trump, have not only said that they are not the source, Mr. Pence said to say, but they've also said this is not happening. So now you would have other people publicly, people of integrity, Kelly or whoever, they might have disagreements with any working environment, but they're also saying that's a false narrative. So who would run to the New York Times? Somebody that thinks they're going to get exposed. And I think that's what you probably had happen. Now, I had to check to see if some of those low-level people at Justice Department, I had to check if they would qualify, and the New York Times themselves said, oh, yes. That would almost be like somebody that's going to get fired at the police department or the fire department. And they already got 3 of them on a drug bust or whatever it was. And I'm going to be next because the texts are going to come out, the deals. And I'll run to the Calder Times or I'll run to my paper. But it's got to be anonymous. And I'm going to expose, the chief or whatever. That's kind of what happened here. It's sad that they did it. When I'm looking at my New York pictures, and I'll post this, and I think that's what you had happen here. And they made sure it happened right at the same time of the Bob Woodward book. Nobody, and I'm a news watcher, nobody within really working with Mr. Trump seriously thought that they should do the 25th Amendment and remove him. Because I've heard even people that are not fans of Trump, when that narrative was being proffered by many in the media, they said, no, it's not reached that level. The 25th Amendment was people like, if they're really having real medical issues and Trump mentally, and he's not. And it's sad that they did that. You know what? And that's what I think you had. And when I read the latest thing, because I just Googled it, it was 1 hour ago, and it was the New York Times themselves that basically were saying they're covering for themselves. New York Times themselves had a whole article online. Who would qualify as a senior administration official? And they basically said, really thousands of people. They don't really have to be senior. The New York Times, I read their article. It could really be anybody. A disgruntled worker of a McCabe and people of that nature, people that have connection. It could even be them. What do you think they would do if they thought the bow was going to break and they're going to now face charges and Trump's looking like he's going to declassify that? Sure, people do what they can to survival. But it's an amazing thing. The USA Today even had an article on when do you use anonymous sources? And I thought they were going to be critical, because many in the media are critical that the New York Times would do something like that with an anonymous source on such a serious charge. And they said, but sometimes, and they showed the history of anonymous op-eds that the New York Times did the last 4 years to justify it. And one was a lady living in a country where she might be killed, sort of like she was a refugee. So, well, obviously that'd be anonymous. And then the USA Today said, basically, possibly the person that revealed this is in fear for their life. Oh, Trump is going to have them whacked. When I first started doing, I'll be done in a sec. When I first started doing a lot of these New York trips, which I'm uploading those videos even as I speak, I walked past Trump Tower because I love walking New York City. But when I began the trips, it just so happened it was during the Trump time, and a lot of things were happening about it. And I just commented on those things, not as a Trump supporter. Just, he would give a conference, and I'd see protesters in front of Trump Tower a few times. And I remember then Trump did the infamous tweet, they tapped my wires. Every media, every outlet said he is absolutely lying. And I remember at the time I did one of the videos, walking in New Jersey, New York. I said, well, more than likely what he means is they surveilled him. They surveilled people with him, Trump Tower or whatever, that they had maybe one of the FISA warrants. This before we knew it. And that was looked at as an absolute, he's mentally unstable if he thinks that they surveilled any people with his team. And then later when it came, and they went on for months that Trump's nuts. Then when it came out that they did indeed do that. And now we know a lot more, if you will, hidden. And then how did the media, did they admit, man, we were wrong? No, they actually said that type of surveillance, meaning tapping phones or whatever, was not literally wire cutters and wires. They actually said things of that nature, which showed what a debacle the media has become. Instead of admitting, no, they did have surveillance on some of Trump's people and all. So really, I think that the big lesson we're learning out of this, I know most Christians say, John, but we don't trust the news, and I agree. But there's a bigger thing. There's agenda-driven people in the country, and if you have a particular agenda that you advocate for, I was walking through Newark a couple times when Cory Booker was not in Congress yet, actually, and now Cory Booker, black, fine man and all, but yet he has an agenda. And in the Kavanaugh hearings, Supreme Court today, he pulled some stunts or whatever, but basically it's like, are you against abortion, Mr. Kavanaugh or others? The country, if you talk about late-term abortion, of course. Of course, anybody should be. Our country has it where you can abort, you can get pregnant 30, 40, 50 times, how many you can in your life. You could wait up to the last day of the 9th month of pregnancy and go and have that child dismembered. It's not illegal. You can do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Should there be any restriction? Should we say, like Clinton said in the past, Bill Clinton, even Hillary said, it should be rare, and then they said safe and legal. Why would you say it should be rare? Because should we use abortion as a right to be celebrated as a birth control when you're looking at the dismemberment of a child in the late term? Of course, Mr. Kavanaugh or anybody else should never be ashamed that something like that is a very wrong thing. And Mr. Booker he said he's going to have his Spartacus moment. Mr. Booker, I watched Kirk Douglas and Spartacus, and you're no Spartacus. Lloyd Benson and, what's his name? So, to put it in context, I think the bow's going to break on a lot of the deep state. A lot of these people, and you say, but that's all a fabrication. No. You've never had more FBI people within these agencies be fired, demoted, and Inspector General Horowitz saying they did crimes. McCabe lied 4 times to the FBI. Mr. Comey is still gonna more than likely face criminal charges. Former head of the FBI. Very rarely, you have never had that amount within like an 8-month period. And it did come because things got revealed and they're hiding stuff. And so I would just say, the overall view is the New York Times themselves tonight said in their own article, because I Googled it, who qualifies as a senior administration official? And their own article said, really, it could be anybody. We don't mean it was readily. It could almost be somebody that was like a friend of McCabe, and these, maybe a girlfriend is going to get it. You see, and you roil up. You roll up, unsubstantiated. Scripture says, when you bring that charge, ethical, it's got to be 2 or more witnesses, and they were not anonymous witnesses. So I think it just so happens I started a lot of my talks walking in those areas, looking at these things, and seeing how the media, and look, the Caller Times is part of the USA Today network. And I read the, not Caller Times article, I looked at all the news today on all the sites. And the USA Today basically said, well, sometimes we give protection. So they equated almost the protection of this anonymous source that's a supposed senior administration official. They equated the protection offered to that person to keep their anonymity with the same as if some woman was a refugee and she was going to be killed by ISIS. And that's they used an example of a woman from another country. You know what died? Journalism has died in this country. That's what died.